I came to Perth, studied here to become a teacher, and everything was fine until 2 years ago when I started to look for my birth parents. What I learned through my search is that my birth mother, she met this Australian guy, went to Melbourne in 1985 and worked for the Melbourne Club. And in 1987, after getting married to Reg Evans, she disappeared. Basically, she vanished.
Welcome to the Cultural Pulse Vodcast.
CulturalPulse is a global micro-community tech company supporting organisations to engage micro-communities better.
Each episode will connect you with the pulse of what's actually happening in different micro-communities across Australia and New Zealand and get under the hood of cultural behaviours, perspectives and new experiences.
Stay updated with Cultural Pulse on our website, download our app and subscribe to our social channels.
Welcome, Matthieu and Melba. We've got a really extraordinary story here to discuss today, and I'm really excited as part of the Cultural Pulse team to talk to you about your life story, Matthieu and Melba. What touched you about Matthieu's life story? So just a quick introduction. Matthieu, you were born in the Philippines in Olongapo City. Mm-hmm. You were adopted and raised in southwest of France.
Right. Yeah.
And how old were you when you went there?
I was almost 3 years old.
3 years old. You then settled in Perth in WA 12 years ago.
Yeah. Yes.
You're a French teacher now.
Yes.
And your biological mother has Filipino ancestry, and your biological father has African American ancestry.
That's right. Correct.
So this story is all about your biological mother, who's part of the Aussie Filipino community, and we're here today because we want to find out more about that story. And there was a story done on SBS. It was produced by Artemis Films, and it's called "Every Family Has a Secret." And for everyone out there, would encourage you to watch that. It's a fascinating piece. So it's a piece that's well done, and Matthieu's story is in detail on there. And there was also an Age article written about the whole story that the Victoria Police have been investigating as well over the years. And Melba, you are a Filipino community leader based in Melbourne, founder and chairperson of a family violence advocacy group called the Silent Witness Network. Yes. And you're chair of the Centre for Philippine Concerns Australia, which achieves widespread public awareness, particularly on the high level of family violence that involving Filipino women in Australia in the 1980s. So not a lot of people may know about that as a thing.
That's right. So, not a lot of people know that the first, how would you call that? The first public discussions on family violence were actually done by the Filipino community. You know, that it was the ethnic community that raised alarm on family violence in Australia, not the white Anglo. It was the Filipino community. And
amazing.
It was far back as the 1980s.
Yeah, so we're going to go into more detail on that. You led the national campaign on the issue, which involved the murders and disappearances of Filipino women from the 1980s onwards. And Nenita Evans, so Annie, affectionately known as Annie, who is Matthieu's biological mother, was one of those who went missing in Australia 3 decades ago. And Melba, you'd provide interesting insight into the Filipino community and how that's evolved over the last 3 decades as well. Surely there's been a big shift and change with one of the larger migrant communities now in Australia. So also keen to hear from you as we go on in this podcast about what life was like for Filipino Aussies back in the 80s, because it was a very different time back then. And when did you come here, Melba?
I came here in 1989.
Okay. And where in the Philippines did you come from?
Well, I come from the cities. I come from Caloocan City, which is next to Manila. So I grew up in the cities. Yeah. And I came here in 1989 because I married an Australian national.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Matthieu, would love to, for those who haven't watched the documentary yet, could you give us a little bit of context of the key kind of points of your extraordinary story?
Yes. I was born in the Philippines at Olongapo City. And basically, I've been abandoned when I was only a few months. I spent some time in an orphanage. I was adopted when I was almost 3 years old, and I grew up in the southwest of France, in a very small village, not very far from Toulouse, in the southwest. And I spent 20 years there. Great life, beautiful childhood. I had the opportunity to live in Barcelona, in Spain. And when I was in Barcelona, I met a couple of Australians from Perth. They asked me to come here. I came to Perth, studied here to become a teacher, and everything was fine until 2 years ago, when I started to look for my birth parents. What I learned through my search is that I'm still in touch with my orphanage in the Philippines, and they told me that maybe your mother went back to her province in Guiyuan, Eastern Samar. And so I did some quick search, and they told me, I found some relatives in the Philippines. They told me her story, and they mentioned that my birth mother, actually, you said that her name was Nenita Evans, but for many years on my birth certificate, I saw that her name was Anita Partosa Padulon. So until 2 years ago, in my mind, I just knew her name, as Anita, and I discovered later on that her real name was Nenita, and she used to be called as well Annie. So it was very confusing for me. But basically, she met this Australian guy, went to Melbourne in 1985, and worked for the Melbourne Club. And in 1987, after getting married to Reg Evans, she disappeared. Basically, she vanished. And since this period, it was on the 8th of January 1987. Since this period, we don't have any news from her. We don't know. The police did an investigation, but nobody found her body. So it was a bit challenging for me to learn, quite quickly that these dramatic events, and I'm trying to find out what's happened to her. So there are two approaches here. There are when I did the documentary with Artemis Media, we went to Melbourne and I met professionals. And I also discussed with a lot of professionals and community leaders like Melba. And most of them believe that my mother passed away, that she is dead. And it was very hard to believe it for me. If there is a little chance that she felt that my mother felt that she was in danger, and in the 80s, I believe that it was easier to disappear. So maybe at this time she decided to vanish, and maybe there is a little chance that she lives somewhere in Australia. Not sure yet. But if there is 1%, I will take my chance and I will look for her. And I tried since the document. I've been in touch with the police, and basically they said to me that they couldn't start the investigation with my mother because there are not enough resources. And I had the same kind of message 2 years ago when I started to search for her, and I believe that was the same kind of approach they had for the last 33 years. So it was very frustrating for me.
Yeah, so, sounds very frustrating. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so the idea here is it's okay. It's well, it's not okay, but I'm not a professional, so I'm just trying to do what I can control. So.
But you have engaged professionals, and there's been crime investigators, and there's been the crime writer for the Age, for example, who have commented on the case, and there are some really the strong pieces that are missing, and that possibly could there could be more exploration around that.
Yes. So I'm trying to target I'm doing two different approaches here. I'm trying to get a team of community leaders, professionals who can try to help me to understand what's happened to my mother. And on the other side, I'm trying to contact the Filipino community in Australia. It's very important that we've got now some content. We've got the documentary. We've got people who are in media who can communicate. And I think we need to target the right people and find a way to really push the story, and to make sure that the Filipino community know what's happened to my birth mother. But my birth mother is just one person. I believe that we're talking as well, and Melba can talk about it. I think about the women who migrated here, people who migrated here, and who have been maybe in the same position over the last 30 so during so many years.
So Melba, thanks for that, Matthieu. Melba, could you tell us what touched you about this story in particular?
Well, it just shows the human nature, really. Look, Matthieu is a person who could actually just be satisfied because he had a good life, with the adopted parents, and now he's got his own family. But he chose to actually look for his mother, and that's human nature. Any son or daughter, will look for their parents, mother or father, especially if they felt that uh, it's about time that they actually connect, with their biological mother or father. So it's very human nature, and it just goes to show that people, no matter what the circumstances in their lives are, will always go back to their past, and try to connect the present with the past. And Nenita, as Matthieu has said, was one of many, thousands, hundreds of thousands of Filipino women, you know, who married foreign nationals in those years. Okay, the 1970s, 80s, and it continued. And there was a really huge influx of Filipino women who went overseas, to marry foreign nationals, and Nenita was one of them. This was because of that systemic problem, of poverty in third world countries. As you can see, the receiving countries would be first world countries, isn't it? Australia, Europe. So many in Europe married European men. And Anita, I was there when we started. Anita wasn't the first in our list of documented cases. When she disappeared, it was in the 1990s. Our documented cases started from the 1980s. You see, and we started with 18 cases, and Nenita was in that list of 18 cases. There were probably around 3 or 4 disappeared, but the rest were murdered. Okay, and there were many cold cases, where the murderers were never found. Okay, so here in Melbourne, I'm still waiting for one of those cold cases to actually come up, so that finally we can have a closure, to whoever murdered, one of, this woman. Now with Nenita, it's good that Matthieu is looking for her, because um, I went to the inquest, of her case, and at that time, the judge, in that court, you could feel the condescending nature, you know, of the judge, in terms of Filipino women. You know, we were really looked down in those years, because and that was a stigmatization that until now we are bearing.
Mm.
There was a friend of Nanita actually went to witness, and because she had difficulty speaking English, and difficulty even understanding, the questions of the judge, because you know the accent and all those things, that's usually a big barrier.
Mm.
And so she sort of was really dismissed. you know her testimony was dismissed, by the judge. Okay, so that inquest didn't actually say anything significant in terms of, the justice that Nanita needed, and required. And then, of course, the complications of, a man who, and Matthieu and I were talking about that he seemed to be related to her in her job. Okay, but then that man is now dead. Okay, so how we piece together, and finally, even just for closure, find that really this man may have been involved in her disappearance. It's up for the future, isn't it, Matthieu? This will be part of the ongoing journey, that Matthieu has put himself now, in this story.
The man you speak of is Nenita's ex-boss, in a way, from that time at the Melbourne club. And there's some allegations around his involvement in this. I know the documentary talked about potentially reaching out to his wife. Has anything, what's happened since the documentary, Matthieu?
Nothing. So I was waiting for Article Media to allow me to start my search after the documentary. So when I've been able to do it, I have contacted the police in Melbourne, and the detective in charge of the cold case told me that there was not enough resources for now. And so which means I said to her, look, leave it. I'm going to look on my side and see what I can do, because that's exactly the same message you guys gave me 2 years ago, and I was so frustrated. So I just try to see who can really help me, and I'm not going to waste my time with the police. I'm trying to find ways to be able to control the search and to get the right people next to me.
And what's your relationship been with Nenita's partner at the time, Reg Evans?
Yes, so Reg Evans has been very, very nice and welcoming. At first, because of the feedback from my relatives in the Philippines, because they all believe that he murdered my mother, and we don't have it. There are no evidences, etc. So I just try to I wanted to know what he wanted to say. I wanted to hear him, and I wanted to be in connection with him, because he's, I think, one of the people who know my mother's most. So, and it was very important to know, for me to get some information about my mother, how she was, her personality, and so on, and maybe to get some photos. When I started to search for my mother, I contacted an association in Perth, which is called Jigsaw, and they help to find lost families in Australia. And at some point, the manager said to me, "Look, we found Greg Evans, and we would like he would like to be in touch with you. Would you like to do it or not? Because that would be, maybe you will have maybe one chance to talk to him, and even if we don't know if he has been involved or not, it's always good maybe to hear what he has to say, etc." So I say yes. I'm when I started to search for my birth parents, I promised myself to have a positive mind, and to take what I can take, and to try to get the most of it. So this is what I did, and I didn't regret things. We had several discussions together, and we are still in touch on a regular basis. But he gave me very, very good information, feedback about my mother. He gave me some photos as well, and so on. So and I think he's a very, very nice person. I don't know the circumstances, but so far I'm very happy with the way he had me with the circumstances, and as you can see on the documentary, he offered me a gift, which was very touching, and I'm very grateful for this.
So that gift was a blanket that was made by your mother, and one of the few things that you have that was kind of hers, and that was given to him or his mother. Is that right?
Well, my mother made it for his mother. So it was, I think, yeah, it was quite I think it was a big, I can, this kind of gift, I think Greg doesn't have a lot of things left from his wife, so I think it was a big move for him to offer me this blanket. And at first I didn't want it, because I wanted him to keep it, but we had a talk after that, and it was very important for him for me to have it. And it is actually the first thing. I've got some photos of my mother, but I didn't have anything that she made, or she owned, really, and so on. So
yeah, it was a really, really touching moment. What do those families back in the Philippines, how does it impact them, Melba, from your experience?
The ones in the Philippines, I don't know much, but the ones here, yeah, I mean, there are lots of, yeah. I remembered one of the murdered Filipino women. Her son is now a doctor. You know, and it's nice to know that despite what happened to his mom, he really persevered. To have good status in life. So he's now the doctor, and I just don't know if he continued to relate with the half brother. So there are many connections that they would have to deal with. There are a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I mean, for the last 2 decades, of course, even it was us, the Filipino community, with our campaign on family violence, that actually pushed the boundaries here in this country about family violence. During that time, I remember my co-feminists, Anglo-Saxon women, told me that um, they were having difficulty even convincing the government to accept that family violence is not just a family affair, that it is not just a problem within the four confines of the house. But then, because of the scandals, you know, created by the huge public media interest in our campaign, that pushed the boundary that now, you know, it's already an acceptable thing that family violence, is a public responsibility. It's a community
So,
responsibility. So anyone can actually call the police, even if you're just a bystander in the street and you saw a couple fighting, you can call the police, you know, and report. So that would not happen, 2 3 decades ago.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And how do you think the community has actually processed that notion of, say, shame that came up during the 80s and 90s? Like, what do you
Well,
do with that feeling?
that's a good example. You know, in those years, I was taboo. You know, they think of me as a destroyer of marriages. You know, and I remember we had our office, the Center for Philippine Concerns. We were given a space by the Uniting Church. You know, in North Melbourne, so we had a Center for Philippine Concerns office. We were vandalized a few times. You know, by Australian husbands who were very angry, with the fact that, you know, those problems were being exposed, okay? And that their wives, were escaping from them and using the women's shelters, the women's refuges. You're familiar with women's refuges, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Matthew, are you? These are the secret houses that women who are victims of domestic violence can hide, you know, from their husbands. Okay,
Okay.
okay. So, and there are many of them all over the country.
And this is exactly what I saw when I've been in touch with the Filipino community. I wasn't used to it, but I can see that they are very close. Everybody is very close and they support each other, etc. You know, and talking with Melba, she has been a great source of knowledge for me because I'm not, I have never been exposed to the American culture or the Filipino culture, and I've learned a lot about what happened in the 80s with Melba. And it's very interesting, because what she describes here, how Filipino women are involved, engaged, and that's exactly what I can see in the Philippines with my relatives. When I started to be in touch with them, they were very supportive. They tried to work together, to talk to each other, to try to find my mother. It is a different culture, and so it's very interesting.
And I hope it gives you an idea as well how probably your mother would be a courageous one, Matthew.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I think
What
she.
what
Except,
what makes you say that, Melba?
well, in the first place, she had she was friends with some of the Filipino women that I later knew, of course, and it the fact that, you know she built this good relationship with her mother-in-law as well, you know,
Mm.
and I mean nobody from Greg Evans' family could say anything bad about her, Matthew. Am I right?
Yeah.
They probably testified about the fact that she really tried to blend into the family, you know, and really wanted to be a good member of that family. That's courage. Okay. And without, I don't know her English level at that time. Did you know? Did they tell
No.
you? Matthew? Yeah. And then she was working in the Melbourne club. You know that Melbourne club, that men's club is very exclusive.
Yes.
That's courage again. Be able to work, in that club. Now, of course, she met some, and this is where the story we don't know, she fell into whatever was a trap in that situation. But, being able to work in Melbourne club, it must have taken some courage,
Has the Melbourne club ever commented on or provided input into the story?
They
No.
tried to cover it. They tried to cover it.
They didn't want to be part of it. No.
It was an exclusive club for many, many years until some Anglo women started to push the boundary again, that they should also be members of the club.
So, Melba, touching on, you said Nenita had some friends that you later knew. What are some of the conversations you've had with the, say, friends that she later knew, or some of the other, older Filipino women in the community about this topic and this story?
It was far, far back. You see, that's why. And I told Matthieu about. That's why we tried to trace, especially the key woman who testified, unsuccessfully in the court. But they and in every community you'll find that the women will be supporting one another. Okay, they will be helping one another. So I actually don't know very much about her personally, Nenita, but she was part of that group that, especially they speak a language, Visayan, Matthew.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have a lot of, Visayan women friends around. They're a really tightly close group, and they will help one another so much, even, lending money, doing a lot of services for each other. So she was in that group. She was in that group. And I'm pretty sure at that time that our key witness uh, would have wanted to probably be able to say more, but she was treated so badly in the court.
Mm.
You know, I
And
believe
so,
it was
sorry, go
racism.
ahead.
What I saw there was racism, definitely. Now it's not happening because I do a lot of interpreting in the court now for Filipino victims, and I noticed that most of the judges, 90% or more, were very respectful now, are very respectful now of people from non-English speaking background or culturally diverse background, that they make sure that that person has an interpreter. And they are also quite respectful now of the interpreters themselves. Okay?
Yeah.
There was nothing like that in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, Melba, I think it sounds like the work that you're doing is amazing, and you probably help so many people and so many lives. So, from our perspective, thank you for your contribution to the community, because
the work is not ending. I tell you.
Yeah, the identity side of things. What does the Philippines mean to you?
Well, when I went to Melbourne, I had a great opportunity basically to have a feel of my mother's life, So, and I started to reflect on my origins and the situation. But I think it is still a bit blurry, and it is a bit confusing for me because I grew up in France. I'm Filipino. I'm American. I'm Australian, and it is very confusing. So this is why people like Melba are very important for me, because they can really help me to understand the Filipino culture and where I am coming from. And I think it will be easier for me to understand my origin, to transmit my identity, this part of my identity, to my kids. If we go to the Philippines at some points together, I can show them where I was born, I can meet people there, etc., etc. So this is where everything will be clear.
So what would the support of the Filipino community mean to you, given the story and where we are today in 2021 now?
Well, I think that I believe that not a lot of people knows about the story and what's happening right now and what's happened many years ago. And I think it's very important that even we've got some content now. We've got the documentary. We've got the story of my mother, and I would like that the community, the Filipino community, watch the documentary on SBS On Demand. It is called Every Family Has a Secret, season 2.
Yep.
And maybe someone will recognize my mother. Someone met her many years ago. I don't know what's happened to her. I don't know where she is, but I really hope that I give my best shot, and I really hope that someone will be able to contact us, to contact you, or to contact Melba, to help us to find closure to her cold case.
We'll definitely push it out. Is there anything else that you had as a request of the community apart from watching that documentary and contacting us?
Well, the way I do, I search. The way I found my father was different, So I have to use another strategy to find my mother, or to find out what happened to her. So, for example, I am on Ancestry DNA, and I can see I found one cousin in Sydney, fourth, fifth cousin. I haven't been in touch with this person yet, but this is how I found my father in America, DNA search. So maybe, I don't know what's happened since she disappeared, but maybe she's got a new life. Maybe she had children, and maybe some people in the the Filipino community in Australia could take a DNA test, and with great-grandchildren or children, we can go up the ladder and maybe find a way to find her. So
Great.
DNA is a solution as well.
And Melba, what would be the request of the Filipino community from your perspective on this story?
Well, I'm actually still going on with my work on family violence. So um, I would be happy to, if there are people out there who would like to connect to my organization through me around the importance of actually raising public awareness amongst culturally diverse communities about how we can significantly reduce, if not eradicate, family violence within our communities. Okay, because that's a huge problem. Um, and the name of the organization is the Silent Witness Network. Okay, silent witness, because the silent witness are the other members of the family who are witnesses to a family violence situation, and usually they are children. Okay, they are the children, and then other members. So yes, if they can get in touch with the Silent Witness Network, so that we can expand the connections. Okay, we need a big voice here in Australia, because uh, despite the funding of family violence services, uh, the services which are now so very well funded are still not reaching out, you know successfully to the culturally diverse communities. And you would know that even in New South Wales. But you probably have a better a community outreach. I don't know than Victoria. I don't want to compare, but I think generally we do need to connect the various culturally diverse communities and see this as a common fight. That we are entitled to those services and so the community needs to be empowered. You know.
Sure.
I was trying to find another way to reach the Filipino community. So I did a lot of search on Google and basically I found your association, and I did a little bit of homework and I think what I liked with your association is that there were different communities together. You were helping a lot of people, and I believe that the way you were communicating was amazing. So I think I got I said to myself, well, I'm gonna bet on them, and I think that your network can really help me to make a difference.
Awesome, appreciate that. And final one for you, Matthieu. If your mother is still out there, what would you say to her?
Well, that's a great question. Actually,
that's why it's the last one.
Yes. I want to know if I just want to know if she's okay. She's fine, and I want to let her know that everything is fine on my side. I don't know the circumstances why she left me behind, but I just want to let you know that it was a good choice. And at the end of the day, my life is great, and I would be happy to connect because we have to make it count. I've got 2 kids now, and I live in Australia, so it will be easier. It will be easy to meet if she's still alive and she's still around.
Awesome. I actually, there was a question I wanted to ask about your rugby as well. So you played rugby in France, and
Yes.
This potential connection with Australia. So was there any serendipity around you playing rugby and ending up in Australia?
Well, the reason why I ended up in Australia was because I had an opportunity to live in Barcelona. And I was playing in a multicultural team with 11 nationalities. And my best friends over there were were Australian, from Perth. And it was the first time that I was hearing, learning about Perth, etc. And they said to me, "Oh, you should come to visit us." So this was in 2005, 2004, 2005. And I came to Australia at the end of 2006 for the first time. After 2 months, I said, well, I love the lifestyle. And I was looking for a life project. And I decided to come here to turn my life around and to go back to university, to become a teacher, and to prove myself that, I can do something, interesting and so on. So it worked well at the end.
Awesome. And what position did you play?
Fullback.
Oh, nice.
Did you play rugby?
Sorry?
Did you play rugby?
I played at school level.
Yeah. What position?
I played breakaway and on the wing.
Yeah. Okay. Good. With the chicha.
Looking for the gaps and just running.
Hey guys, isn't it a coincidence? What a big coincidence, Matthieu. Because you weren't looking for your mom yet when you decided to come to Australia.
No. It is. I came here because of my friend in Perth, in Barcelona, and it is only 2 years ago that I discovered that my mom migrated here.
That's right.
So really, what people can see on TV, well, my mother's story is really the visible part of the iceberg, because my life story takes you from the Philippines, France, Spain, and then Australia. And over the last 2 years, I discovered with my father, when I found my dad, my birth father in America, I discovered that he told me about our family history in Mississippi, because his family is from Mississippi. And he said to me that they were slaves.
That's right.
So and I couldn't believe it. So there are so many things I have to learn, and it's really important for me to be in touch with people like you. And I'm trying to get to do the same thing with my family in America. We've got 2 historians in our family over there.
Wow.
But it is a bit challenging for us and for me right now, because I've got my family here. I have to manage my mother. I'm trying to find my mother here. My father would like me to go to come to live to America. My mother in France, my adoptive mother in France, would like me to go back to France as well. So I've got a lot of things going on in my life right now.
And
But
I'm waiting for you to move to Melbourne.
yes.
And we'd love you to come to Sydney to do another interview.
Yes, why not? We are planning to go to move to the East Coast, because we want to give an opportunity to our children to discover more about Australia, but also that will help me to look for my mother. So there are a lot of projects are on the way right now.
Very good.
It's amazing. Thank you, Matthieu and Melba. We've got to wrap it up, but thank you so much. I've learned a lot. It's an amazing story. There's so many aspects to it. Melba, once again, the amazing work that you've been doing over all these years, and I take the point that there's a lot more work to be done as well. But thank you for what you've done so far.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Cool, guys.